Welcome to the Reinventors series. Every week we talk to an innovator, someone who's been in this space for a long time, someone who's been thinking big to reinvent these spaces in much more profound and fundamental ways. This week we have Stephen Johnson, who's written this fantastic book, Future Perfect, in which he's come up with this idea of pure progressives, a new kind of mindset essentially to kind of emerge out of progressive thinking, much more techy in some respects, but it's also a mindset about how people who really understand how network technologies work, how you can really reorganize things in a much more fundamental way, in a much more decentralized way than the hierarchical, centralized ways we did in the systems of the 20th century.
Is a top-down government solution the best answer? Is a market-based solution the best answer? Well, there's this other option, which is the peer network solution. Peer progressives share a lot of values with the older progressive tradition. They share the idea that equality and participation is important, but they don't necessarily share that assumption that state-driven structures are always the best answers. Not that they think they should go away, but they also think that there are these peer network collaborative structures that are in some ways as important as traditional government institutions or market-based institutions.
I think the reason progressivism, frankly, has struggled is because the statist, bureaucratic, hierarchical solutions just don't work anymore. Network-like solutions are really a much more effective way of solving many, many problems.
I do think that, there's a couple of things that are driving this. You used to go years and years before maybe someone would talk about their politics or about their values and principles. And now you pretty much have a good idea very quickly. The collective can come together and operate more efficiently than it did before because of transparency.
I consider myself a pure progressive and try to live those values, but in practice, it's much more complicated.
It's messy. It's a lot clearer when one person says, this is what we're going to do. When you put the collective together, they kind of go, huh.
Diversity is hugely important to pure progressives, partially for the older progressive reasons, which is diversity is good in terms of social tolerance, but there's an additional layer to it, which is a whole long tradition of social science we've had over the last 20 or 30 years, which have shown that groups that have more diverse points of view in them make better collective decisions.
The most powerful groups have a mix of diversity and a coherence, some stronger bonds, people who know each other, people who have worked with each other to carry out the implementation.
The person who just can bring together the group or is connected to the most kind of diverse range of groups becomes more important in this kind of environment, particularly as networks themselves are driving it.
I think most recently you see it with the dreamers, undocumented folks who were told by the established progressive movement to, wait their turn. They didn't, and they used the internet to raise a ton of money, and they used the internet to find one another, and they moved forward and they won. And it's something that has changed the way the progressive movement works.
It essentially is such a fundamentally different shift in how you could organize things.
That kind of thinking, to me, is almost non-existent in Washington.
I do think we see the beginnings of this on the federal level. The White House is encouraging people to use data and encouraging coders to, have hackathons in order to open up data. I think is really important baby steps.
These institutions are ripe for being reinvented.
Ideally, we could also have decision-making processes that connect the resources of the large private sector and public sector, and then we have a process to allocate resources to support ideas that originate from the pure sector.
It's not a totalizing theory, but it's a space that I think we have a huge amount of room to explore right now. We are not cyber utopians, right? We do not say that the solution to every problem is to just, get people on the internet. The internet is just a role model. And we can say, look, we organize the internet this way and it really worked. What else can we do? What other kinds of problems can we potentially solve using that same kind of organizational structure?